Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to tell you about my current game of the year, Lies of P. I know I'm late to this one, I tried to get a review code for it, didn't come in at all, so I played it on my own time via Xbox Game Pass and then picked it up afterwards. This is a masterpiece, it is my game of the year, and I know the video is not going to do as well now as it did maybe a month or so ago when the game first came out, but I need you all to know how great this game is, and I don't care if it reaches a couple thousand of you, 10,000 of you, whatever the number ends up being, you gotta know how good my man Pinocchio is. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to begin by first telling you how I experienced Lies of P, because it was quite unique. Let's talk about today's sponsor. The following video is brought to you by BenQ. Ladies and gentlemen, the BenQ X3100i has absolutely changed my gaming experience. I love it with a capital L. You see the setup here? Not impressive. This is what we call, I just moved into a new house 3 months ago and we're still figuring out some rooms here. We use it every single night, whether it's watching Netflix or anime on the TV, or most often we're gaming on this thing. We're talking about Lies of P today, and that's what I've been playing here on this projector. It comes with a bunch of different game modes that you can switch to, from FPS to RPG to SPG and RCG options. So whatever game you're playing, there is a mode supporting for it. It auto detects your system when you hook it up. There's lens shifting, which is not going to impact your input lag at all. You can set up where the image is going to be displayed on your wall, where in this case, like, the image was too big, so I was able to scale it down, shift it, and pan it into particular areas. There's 2K gaming supported with this now. It is an absolutely incredible device, ladies and gentlemen, and I highly recommend it. There's a link in the description down below if you would like to go ahead and check out the BenQ X3100i and get yourself a nice gaming projector. Let's start off with atmosphere. If you've tracked my taste in games, you know I prefer a strong atmosphere in many of my favorite titles. I look at Fallout 3 versus Fallout New Vegas as an example many of you will be very familiar with. I fully know that New Vegas is the better role-playing game, but Fallout 3 and its atmosphere is so top-notch that that's what really pushes it over the edge for me. And Lies of P is loaded up with atmosphere. My favorite Soulsborne hero title is Bloodborne. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. I love the style, the mood, the gothic architecture, how gritty and depressing this universe is. And I feel like we've all collectively been yearning for a Bloodborne remaster or a Bloodborne sequel, something along those lines, and that's been left unanswered for so long. And I forgot what that initial experience of playing Bloodborne, a game so rich with atmosphere and excellent game mechanics, was like, that when I fired up Lies of P, immediately Krat as a setting is so wholeheartedly gripping, especially in the city sections like Rosa Isabelle Street. Oh my word, I was losing it. I just love the music from the records playing in the background as I fought White Lady in this mini boss fight. It is incredible what they've put together here. You see, NeoWiz, the developers of Lies of P, they did some type of like port work or something on an MMO, but this is like their first actual project as a team. And the fact that they are standing toe-to-toe, and in some ways, I think, surpassing FromSoft, they are not only students of the games, but like master of the craft at the same time. It's amazing what they've put together here. One other thing I wanted to call attention to is the way that environments are decorated. Not only is it beautiful, I'll talk about lighting a little bit later in this review, but also what stood out to me is the environmental storytelling. Walking into a room and seeing it dripping with blood, puppets on the ground with a mixture of humans, you can start to put together a story of what happened here. And room after room, area after area, the game doesn't have to say much to you to deliver its absolutely amazing story. While there is a ton of dialogue and you're going to learn about these characters more directly, the zones in which you're exploring, you put the story together without the game ever saying a thing, which is really difficult to do, but I think they absolutely pull it off here in a masterful way. The game is also very direct in the amount of lore it brings to you. You're gonna find notes all over the environment, and I love how they've broken them up. A lot of games will send you one bit of lore, it's a massive text log, but this game will give you a lot of text. It'll just break it up into 4, 5, 6 pages sometimes, and they're little paragraphs. It's more digestible. You actually feel like you can pause and read it, even though you actually had the time to do so anyway. If it was one full page, it just looks a bit overwhelming. This game just seems self-aware, like it went went through a lot of testing. If the combat wasn't anything to go by, you can even tell when it comes to pacing, the moment-to-moment action beyond the combat, things like stopping, reading, they put a lot of thought into it, and so it just adds to the overall universe. In a sense, Krot, the world, is the game's best character. It holds so many secrets within it that you just want to learn everything it holds. Part of the way the world is enhanced is through the story. So what's happening here is there's a puppet frenzy ongoing. All of these puppets have lost their mind, even though the Grand Covenant was this thing that was brought into the mix to make sure that puppets did not act out, did not hurt humans specifically. And there's a much deeper story here playing out. What is going on with P? Why was he not alive when the game first started? Who are all these characters that are filling up Hotel Krot, from Antonia to Geppetto to Sophia? And they all end up playing major factors into the story. It's probably one of my favorite things about Lies of P is that while it's very much a great Souls game, it doesn't forget to tell you a story, and by the time you get to the ending, oh, the tease at the, oh, it's so good. It makes you so excited for the vision this studio has for the future without compromising the story. It's like true excitement for what just happened, but at the same time, knowing what's to come is equally exciting. So I'm not only invested in Lies of P for multiple playthroughs, but Lies of P into the future. Whatever they do with this Souls franchise they're now giving birth to, it's incredibly unique. And the story alone, I think, makes it worth playing, which I've never said about a Souls game, which is why I say that, yes, sometimes they're just toe-to-toe with FromSoft, but there are moments they completely overtake them. I love the FromSoft world they build, but I've always stood against this mindset that people collectively celebrate, that you'll get a ton of lore in item descriptions, and people love digging like that, and I respect it, but for me, I feel like if you got a story and you're trying to tell it, you don't have to give us quest waypoints and all that stuff. You can just tell us. And I think Lies of P does that exceedingly well. You see, Lies of P does a good job at nudging you in the right direction while still having that FromSoft level freedom. One example is when you're going to track a side quest, something that I, for example, had a lot of trouble with in Elden Ring if you were doing it without a guide. With Lies of P, when you see a little icon of someone's face next to an area, that means like, hey, you can progress the side quest here. It doesn't tell you where they are. You just know they're in this area and that your answer to a side quest is here. It's that little nudge in the right direction that just, for me, goes a long way. It doesn't put me on a leash and say like, here, over here, Matty, come on, this is where we're going, follow the waypoint. It just says, look, in this area, you can progress things, and the side quests are absolutely worth seeing out, especially the riddles one. Oh, the ending to that, again, so good, worth seeing out. This game also incentivizes multiple playthroughs, so I just think I've gone on enough about the story. You gotta check it out for yourself if you have Game Pass, or even picking it up, 60 bucks, incredible. Let's talk gameplay though. You've seen a ton of it. This is a mixture of Bloodborne and Sekiro to me, with a lot less focus on parrying, although it's super helpful to parry. So in this game, when you parry, you don't see a stamina meter, but you're gradually going to whittle down this invisible stamina meter, I guess we'll say, that will eventually allow you to stagger a foe. When you do a charge attack by holding the right trigger, you'll hit them into a weak position, they'll be on one knee or something, and you'll hit them with a fatal attack, which will do a ton of damage. And that's sort of the rhythm of the combat. But at the same time, I mean, even down to the dodging animations, it's so unapologetically Bloodborne. Like the side steps to the rolls, it absolutely borrows every bit of the blueprint here in Lies of P. And to many, that makes the game uninventive, but I think its own ideas it introduces on top of it is what makes it special. Beyond animations though, I think the main callback to Bloodborne here is how Lies of P rewards your aggression, which was my favorite part of Bloodborne as a mechanic. Whereas previously in Dark Souls, they told us, hug your shield, roll, use your iframes, get out of the way. Bloodborne taught us, go after your enemy. They just hit you, go back twice as hard and get your health back. Lies of P has that with guard regain, which is something that's influenced by the quartz system as well, so you can maybe get even more health back. So it's a game about going back and forth, avoiding the enemy's attacks when you get hit, going on the aggression, parrying, but also doing charge attacks to stagger them. It's a very intricate dance, but it is extremely rewarding upon even the minor bit of mastery that you can find within it. You can go really deep, but you don't have to be a god among men to really sink your teeth into this game's combat system. We've been in a copycat industry since video games were born. We've seen ideas taken and iterated upon. So I don't get how, when I saw like Lies of P is sitting at like an 80 on Metacritic and OpenCritic, I was mind blown when I found that. I went, are you kidding me? They not only took the FromSoft formula and did it arguably to perfection, but then evolved it. So how did they evolve it? One way is through quartz. So as you beat really tough enemies, complete quests, which again is a really good incentive here, there is this character building system. You're gonna load quartz into various phases of your build, I guess we'll say. And so what happens is these are more active effects that you feel. More damage for a fatal attack, recovering legion through attacking enemies, and so on and so forth. And as you fill in these slots, you'll activate an overall effect. Like for example, being able to dodge roll from your back. So when you get knocked down, you can roll out of the way and avoid some damage. It's those types of mechanics that make it feel like they're not drip feeding you major pieces of the game that were needed from the start. And that's why I appreciate it so much. I've seen so many skill systems. One thing I went in on with Assassin's Creed Mirage, for example, is every game has skill trees, and all they're doing is creating a pool of game mechanics and then taking them away from you and just drip feeding them back into the experience, but they were necessary from the first moment of the game. Whereas Lies of P works beautifully from the start, and as you become more powerful, yes, you have more tools, and it's about using all those tools at your disposal, but also the enemies become tougher because now they can become more mechanically complex. However, don't let the challenge scare you off if you're not into Souls games. The first boss you fight, you will have to do it on your own, and it's gonna be tough. You're gonna learn, and once you learn, guess what? You get to summon for literally every other boss fight if you'd like to. I'm not afraid to admit, I absolutely did that because I always look at it this way. Phase 1 is for you and your summon. You guys get to have a good time together, beating them up, feeling things out. Phase 2, you're probably on your own most times, and that's where the greatest challenge lies. All of these boss fights have multiple phases, multiple ways of attacks, but the thing I learned, especially with Luxasia, is your build matters. It was there I felt a gear change in the very end of the game that I had not recognized the whole way through. Of course, your build matters where you gather Ergo, this game's version of Souls. You spend them on stats. I did a technique build. This type of stuff does absolutely matter, but what matters more is what type of defense you have, what resistances you have, what element you're putting on your blade or your blunt weapon, whatever it may be, through grindstones. So for example, there are puppet bosses that are really weak to acid damage. And so that's how you can kind of balance out a boss that's coming at you aggressively, is finding the right grindstone answer to then hit harder. Is it a necessity? No. Does it make your life a little easier if you experiment? Absolutely. And it's the same thing with resistances. I fought this one boss with heavy electric shock damage, and when I put up my resistance, it changed the absolute difficulty of the boss. So know that beyond summoning, there are answers if you fine-tune enough, and the game is organized enough in its inventory system where it wasn't a pain in the butt to change things out. So there's also new mechanics added on top of this beyond the quartz. There's a system where you can alter your weapons. So one thing I loved about Bloodborne was how many dope weapons they are, where you had the base form and then you had the modified version, where I always used Ludwig's Holy Blade, which was a normal sword and then turned to a great sword. I love that. One of my favorite weapon concepts in video games. However, Lies of P takes it a step further. Not only do you get these incredible boss weapons, think of boss souls you could trade in for boss weapons in the Souls games, but you can also take handles of all these weapons and the blade part of all these weapons and mix and match them, which changes their animation, their appearance, the Fable arts you can use. Fable arts are the little blue meters you see in the bottom right corner of the screen. Think of these like your special attacks. You can unlock quartz to then build those up by attacking, by backstabbing enemies, by doing fatal attacks and so on and so forth. And these are going to save you in a moment's notice, whether you use them as a parry, whether you use them to lay on heavy damage. It's a big kind of risk reward system. Combined with the new Legion arm, which I use the puppet string because you get this Attack on Titan level nape of the neck cut attack that's, oh my god, so sick, and you can use it to evade enemies. That's what I love about it. There's so many new wrinkles to the experience. It truly blows my mind that there are people who just labeled it as a copycat and moved on. There are so many new things introduced here, and it tells its own original, dark-hearted story that I adored. I really really am so impressed by it, to the point where when I finished it up, I really had a tiny, like, this is the list of complaints I had, this small. I would say the final dungeon isn't as artistically inspired as the remainder of the game. That is one thing I would 100% point out and say, look, the whole game feels very inspired, even down to when they do their own Souls level swamp. You know how all these games need their own Blight Town, so to say, like the creative lore-focused twist that they put on it with puppets and oil, it's brilliant. So there are a lot of artistically lore-inspired locales in this game, and then the final area is an amazing challenge, but visually I was left until the final boss kind of wanting more there. That would be one of my complaints. I think the other is sometimes the camera can be a bit of a problem. These games always have this issue where when you have some aggressive bosses in this game, in the arenas fit you and the boss pretty well, but some of these bosses, I mean, they'll swing at you 8 times in a row, and that's where it turns into Sekiro, like, get your deflect on. But as you continue to back up from that aggression, you get stuffed into a wall, and the camera will lead to some untimely deaths, unfortunately. So that is one thing you should keep an eye out for, but I sit here and I rack my brain, and that's when I knew well and truly beyond everything I enjoyed that this is my game of the year. I know I get a lot of complaints, whether it was my Spider-Man 2 review, my Final Fantasy 16 review, my Starfield review. Matty, you're so critical. It's like, pay attention to the things I like, because look at this. I don't have a list of complaints for this one, and that's when I was like, this is a special game that I can walk away from it and go, that was a masterpiece. I really can't say I disliked anything about my time there. And especially when you think about the run clock, a lot of people get turned off from Souls games. They fatigue you, they wear you down, it's tough, it's agonizing, but I think this game gives you enough answers, and on top of that, it's 25 hours is what it took me. I mean, it's shorter on your New Game Plus run for sure, but yeah, this isn't like a massive commitment in the scheme of things. And given the amazing New Game Plus content, this is some serious bang for your buck. It's content rich, it's impressive visually. I mean, I gotta call out the way they light some of these environments. It's brilliant, from the way they use torches to like headlights of certain vehicles. It just so good. Like, especially in Lorenzini Arcade, I was blown away. Like, what they've done here is tremendous, where as I sit here now, and I've given it some time to think about it because I've had this game beaten for a while, this may be my favorite Souls-like, which is crazy to think because I was so impressed by Elden Ring, given it was this magnum opus that pulled all these ideas together. But Lies of P manages to just walk the line of so many different games and genres. The thing I love about it most, if I were to point out one thing as a game developer, is I can see what this team really likes. I don't see just FromSoft in this game. I see Final Fantasy. There's a one-winged angel reference in here. There's a Buster Sword. I see Trails, the court system, hello, so obvious. I see so many games packed into this one. It feels like the creators of the team play a lot of games and said, we like all these mechanics and all this atmosphere and all these systems, how do we pull it together? And they did it. They did it exceptionally well. Easily the best game I've played this year. Granted, I haven't finished Baldur's Gate 3, so, you know, who knows what changes when I start wrapping that up in this coming month. But Lies of P, at the very minimum, a top 3 experience, but I don't see it moving from the top. Ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts. I'm looking forward to hearing yours down below. Did you play Lies of P? If so, let me know how you thought the game went for you. Otherwise, if you haven't tried it out, do you plan on playing it? I hope so. It's really good. It's on Game Pass. It's already sold 1 million copies. Like, it's, oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. So let me know if you try it out. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Links in the description down below. Be sure to consider checking out the Patreon. We are starting our holiday video push there. Eventually, those will be live for everyone in December, but if you want to get some early access to that, go ahead and check that out. Other than that, stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.